Thank you and hello. My name is Dr. Titania R. Harris, USF QAQI Program Manager. This video is designed to help community members in understanding the importance of human research. The USF QAQI program team, Brittany Powell, Research Compliance Administrator, Site Auditor, and Helena Polanski, Research Compliance Administrator, IRB Auditor, will join me in delivering this research community outreach presentation. We will start by introducing the USF departments that is presenting this video. Talk about two specific events that resulted in harm to individuals that participated in research and how regulations were developed to prevent these events from happening again. We'll then define the phases of research studies and close on research-informed consent. We will also have 3 test your knowledge quizzes embedded within the presentation to help you measure your level of understanding. Now let's talk about the departments presenting this video. First, let's explain RIC's mission and vision statements, what is HRPP, and QAQI. USF Research Integrity and Compliance, or RIC's, mission is to maximize success in research and innovation for the USF faculty, students, and staff, as well as to comply with all required standards of research administration. RIC's vision, Research Innovations at the USF of South Florida, envisions a dynamic, innovative, and diversified environment that will promote and support the research and creative scholarly activities of faculty, staff, and students, as well as the general community. HRPP. Now, let me give you some information about USF Human Resource Protection Program, or HRPP, and USF Quality Assurance Quality Improvement Program, or QAQI, and how both programs work towards community research comprehension. In general, HRPP consists of individuals, programs, and committees tasked with the responsibility of protecting human research participants, also called subjects. The function of the HRPP is to assist the university's institutional review board in following ethical principles and regulatory requirements set by the state and federal governments. I said Institutional Review Board, or IRB, earlier. Let me explain what is an IRB. Institutional Review Board, or IRB, is a group of formally designated individuals tasked with periodic review of the university's biomedical and social behavioral human research. The group reviews all research protocols and related material, such as consent documents and recruitment material, to ensure individuals who will participate understand the research. QAQI, or Quality Assurance Quality Improvement Program, has 2 major responsibilities. We assist researchers in conducting human subjects research in a safe and ethical way, and we provide education to researchers and their study teams, as well as providing them with tools to help them conduct their research. We do this by performing visits with the study teams to go over their processes and research documents. Now, these visits are called audits. In addition to performing routine and for-cause audits, we also help the study team prepare for audits conducted by other organizations, such as the FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration. We provide consultation to answer questions about the regulations and look at study documents to make sure the information collected during the study is being written down correctly. The QAQI program also works with the IRB to make sure the reviews conducted by the group are consistent and conducted in accordance with both local and federal research regulations. Before we talk about our next topic, the events that happen in research that cause harm, let's explain why human research and clinical trials are important. Clinical trials are necessary to assist with developing new and better drug, devices, and treatments. The results allow doctors and scientists to explore new opportunities for disease treatment, management, and prevention. Clinical research trials make way for today's modern medicine, which allow individuals to live longer and have more comfortable lives than any other point in history. Human research is how we advance medications, devices, and treatments. To support this advancement, research needs participants to volunteer. These individuals need to be fully informed about the clinical trial, including the risks and benefits they might receive from participating, before they decide if they want to participate or not. Now let's talk about the two major events that have helped to shape the research regulatory world today. Let's start with the Henrietta Lacks story. Due to the movie, book, and lawsuit, I'm sure you are aware of the Henrietta Lacks story. Now, if you haven't heard of it, let me give you some information. In 1951, there was a young lady named Henrietta Lacks. She was seen in her doctor's office about her cervical cancer. Unknown to Miss Lacks, some tissue was removed from the tumor and sent to a lab at Johns Hopkins Hospital to be cultured in test tubes. The laboratory was George Gay's lab. This was a standard medical test that was done to allow doctors to diagnose different diseases. About George Gay. The backstory on George Gay is that he attempted for years to get cancer cells to divide continuously and infinitely in a laboratory setting so that scientific community could have an infinite supply of human cells on which to perform experiments. Gay used Miss Lack's tumor cells in his lab and never informed her that her tumor cells were being used for research. Despite aggressive treatment, Miss Henrietta Lacks died at the age of 31, leaving behind a husband and 5 young children. Years later, Miss Lack's children accidentally learned that their mother's cervical cancer cells, now called HELA cells, were being used in research. Miss Lack's cells and the experiments that were performed with them led to the creation of a massive for-profit industry. Ironically, Miss Lack's family lived in poverty and never received any of the financial benefits derived from their mother's tumor cells. Miss Lack's cells played a vital role in human biospecimens and scientific and medical advances. Although the ethical and policy issues associated with research using human cells or tissues, called biospecimens, have long been the subject of scholarly debate. The story of Henrietta Lacks, her family, and the creation of HELA cells captured the attention of a much broader audience. The story has been a catalyst for policy change, including major regulatory changes proposed in the United States surrounding greater informed consent when the use of biospecimens, in particular genetic information, will be used for future research. These proposals were introduced in part on public opinion, requiring a closer look at what the public thinks about these proposed policies. We will go over some of these policies in a minute, but first let's talk about the next major research ethical concern, the Tuskegee study. In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service, working with the Tuskegee Institute, began a study to record the natural history of syphilis, referred to as the USPHS Syphilis Study at Tuskegee. The researchers recruited African American men. The men received free medical exams, free meals, and burial insurance, but were not told about their disease or offered treatment for the disease. In other words, the men were not fully informed about the study, and they were not given the opportunity to give their consent or agreement to participate. Researchers were not truthful and told the men they were being treated for bad blood, which was a local term used to describe several ailments, including syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. Due to the results of this study, in 1943, penicillin was found to be the treatment of choice for syphilis and became widely available to treat syphilis. But again, the men in the study were not offered treatment. In 1972, an Associated Press story about the study was published. As a result of public knowledge, the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs appointed an ad hoc advisory panel to review the study. Now, an ad hoc advisory panel is a special purpose committee of limited duration appointed to consider a specific matter. An example of this would be a homeowners association. The advisory panel concluded that the study was ethically unjustified. The risk of harm to the human subjects outweighed the methods used to get the results and should not have continued. In October 1972, the panel advised stopping the study. In March 1973, the panel also advised the Secretary of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, also known as the Department of Health and Human Services today, to instruct the USPHS to provide all necessary medical care for the survivors of the study. The Tuskegee Health Benefit Program was established to provide these services. In 1975, the Tuskegee Health Benefit Program was established to provide all necessary medical care for the survivors of the study. Later that year, the THBP expanded to include participants' wives, widows, and children. In 1995, the program was expanded to include health and medical benefits. The last study participant died January 2004. The last widow receiving THBP benefits died in January 2009. Participants' children continue to receive medical and health benefits. Now, let's talk about the research regulations that were developed because of these events. The Tuskegee Project led to the National Research Act of 1974, requiring higher protection for human subjects participating in research. In 1974, the National Research Act was signed into law, creating the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. The National Commission identified basic principles of research conduct and suggested ways to ensure those principles were followed. In addition to the Commission's recommendations, regulations were passed in 1974 that required researchers to get voluntary informed consent from all persons taking part in studies done or funded by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, also known as the Department of Health and Human Services today. They also required that all Department of Health, Education, and Welfare supported studies using human subjects be reviewed by institutional review boards, which decide whether research studies meet ethical standards. Ethics Advisory Board was formed in the late 1970s to review ethical concerns and issues of biomedical research, as well as providing guidance. As a result of their work, the 1979 publication, commonly known as the Belmont Report, summarized the three ethical principles that should guide human research: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. From 1980 to 1983, the President's Commission for the Study of Ethical Problems in Medicine and Biomedical and Behavioral Research reported every 2 years on the adequacy and uniformity of the federal rules and policies and their implementation for the protection of human subjects in biomedical and behavioral research. In 1991, federal departments and agencies, 16 in total, adopted the federal policy for the protection of human subjects, which we call the Common Rule today. In October 1995, President Bill Clinton created a National Bioethics Advisory Commission funded and led by the Department of Health and Human Services. The Commission's task was to review current regulations, policies, and procedures to ensure all possible safeguards are in place to protect research volunteers. It was succeeded by the President's Council on Bioethics, which was established in 2001. Then the Presidential Commission for the Study of Bioethic Issues was established in 2009. The rules and policies for human subjects research have been reviewed and revised many times since they were first approved, and efforts to promote the highest ethical standards in research are ongoing. Now let's test your knowledge. Remember earlier it was stated that there are 3 tests embedded within the presentation to check what you have learned. We will read the question and answers, give you a few moments to think on your response, and then give you the correct answer. The story of Henrietta Lacks, her family, and the creation of HeLa cells captured the attention of U.S. citizens. This attention supported what changes in regulations? To help researchers perform biomedical research without consent. To help companies to obtain biomedical samples without consent. To force researchers to obtain consent from individuals prior to performing any research activities. The correct answer is to force researchers to obtain consent from individuals prior to performing any research activities. The Henrietta Lacks story has been a catalyst for policy change, including major regulatory changes proposed in the United States surrounding informed consent. There's one more question. Again, I will read the question and answers, give you a few moments to think on the response, and then give you the correct answer. The USF Public Health Service syphilis study at Tuskegee caused an outcry from citizens, which supported a number of changes in research regulations. Which of the following regulations was developed? The National Research Act of 1974, National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research, the Belmont Report, or all of the above. The correct answer is all of the above. Due to the unethical conduct of the USPHS syphilis study at Tuskegee, several research regulations were developed. This included the National Research Act of 1974, National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research, and the Belmont Report. Next, we will discuss the different phases of research studies. Helena Polanski, QAQI Research Compliance Administrator, IRB Auditor, will present this information.
Hello, my name is Helena Polanski, and I am the USF QAQI Research Compliance Administrator, IRB Auditor. We will now discuss the phases of research and how this information can help you make informed decisions in participating in research. It's in the participants' best interest to understand the phases of research when deciding whether or not they want to participate in a study. A clinical trial investigating a drug or therapy is typically divided into 4 phases: Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4. Each phase has a different purpose in testing the treatment's safety and effectiveness. We will define the 4 phases of research and how the research phases protect study volunteers from harm while ensuring new drugs and therapies are developed safely. Phase 1 is the initial step in developing medications, treatments, and medical equipment. The intent of a Phase 1 clinical trial is to gauge the safety, side effects, and ideal dosage of a new treatment. The aim of a Phase 1 trial is to determine whether the treatment is safe to give to humans, how much of the drug is safe to give, potential treatment side effects, and what happens to the drug within the body. Phase 1 clinical research is usually performed on a small number of healthy participants. These trials typically begin with the administration of a very low dose of the investigational treatment. If the treatment does not produce unacceptable side effects, researchers may increase the treatment dosage depending on the result. During the Phase 1 study, researchers observe and record any side effects related to the investigational treatment, along with their severity and dose dependence. Researchers also look for indications of the treatment positively affecting the target illness. Some Phase 1 trials are also first-in-human studies, or FIH studies, meaning the treatment has not previously been tested in people. Phase 2 builds upon Phase 1. Once an experimental treatment is determined to be successful in Phase 1, it could enter the second phase of clinical testing. In a Phase 2 trial, the researcher wants to confirm the data found in Phase 1 is accurate. In addition, Phase 2 is focused on verifying the safety of the medication or treatment, as well as the medication dosage amount. The goal of Phase 2 is to further investigate the safety and effectiveness of the experimental treatment. These studies typically involve a larger group of participants, usually around 100 to 300 patients, all of whom have the condition the study therapy aims to treat. Phase 2 trials usually determines whether the treatment is safe to give to humans, which doses of the treatment are safe to give to humans, what side effects are associated with the treatment and how to manage them, whether or not the treatment is effective, and the safety and effectiveness of the new treatment compared to existing treatments. Participants in Phase 2 clinical trials are usually given the highest safe dose of the treatment identified in Phase 1. They are then monitored for side effects and signs of effective treatment. In some Phase 2 trials, participants are divided into 2 or more groups. One group may receive the standard treatment for their condition, while others receive the treatment under the study. Sometimes, different groups are given different doses of the same therapies. Comparing the treatment outcomes of these different groups allow researchers to assess the effectiveness of new versus existing therapies. It also furthers their understanding of the experimental treatment's dose-dependent outcomes. For example, the effect on illnesses and side effects each dose may produce. Phase 3 builds upon Phase 2. Within this phase, the researcher wants to confirm the effectiveness of the medication or treatment to the current standard of care, which is the medication or treatment that is currently approved for a particular disease or condition. The effectiveness of a medication or treatment is how well the medication performs. The FDA indicates 50% as a minimum efficacy rate. This means that 50% of individuals will have success when taking the medication or treatment. The purpose of a Phase 3 trial is to find out if the treatment under the study is more effective than currently available therapies. Phase 3 trials are performed on a larger population sample than Phase 1 or Phase 2, usually involving anywhere from 300 to 3,000 participants. After this phase approval, a medication or treatment is marketed to the general public. In Phase 3, patients are often divided into random groups to receive different doses and combinations of treatments. This allows researchers to investigate how effective the treatment is compared to standard treatments, how effective the treatment is at different doses, the type, frequency, and severity of side effects associated with the new versus existing treatments, and how the treatment affects a patient's quality of life compared to standard treatments. Drugs performing well in Phase 3 trials are often put forward for government regulatory approval. This approval confirms that the experimental drug or therapy meets the government's standards for safety and efficacy and can be used to treat patients outside of clinical trials. Phase 4 evaluates the medication or treatment's effectiveness. Phase 4 clinical trials, also known as post-marketing or therapeutic use studies, are performed on already tested and approved drugs. These studies are used to investigate rare but serious side effects the new drug or therapy causes. This is important because side effects affecting very few people, for example 1 in 1,000, may not always emerge during a phase 3 trial. However, such effects can appear more frequently once a treatment is approved for use among the general population. It is crucial for researchers to engage in ongoing study of the drug so they could identify and manage any serious side effects in participants. During a phase 4 trial, researchers will observe the frequency and severity of rare side effects in the general population, the safety of the treatment for those who experience rare side effects, the long-term risks and benefits associated with the treatment, the efficacy of the treatment across a larger population sample size, the risks and benefits of the treatment at different doses, and the risks and benefits of the treatment in combination with other treatments. Now let's test your knowledge. I will read the question and answers, give you a few moments to think on your response, and then give you the correct answer. A clinical trial investigating a drug or therapy is typically divided into phases, and each phase has a different purpose in testing the treatment's safety and efficacy. How many phases are there? 5, 2, 3, or 4? If you chose 4, that's correct. There are 4 phases of research that ensure new drugs and therapies are developed effectively, as well as protect study volunteers from harm. Thank you for learning about the phases of research. Next, we will discuss the research-informed consent. Brittany Powell, QAQI, Research Compliance Administrator, Site Auditor, will present this information.
Hello, my name is Brittany Powell, and I am the USF QAQI Research Compliance Administrator, Site Auditor. In human research, the research team is required to make sure that any individual that is considering whether they want to participate or not in the research study is fully informed about what will happen during the study and that the individual gives their voluntary permission or consent to participate by signing the informed consent form. This is a process and conversation between the research team and the prospective subject. The consent is not just a form to be signed. When you're considering if you should participate in a research study, the research activities should be explained within the informed consent form. Now let's go over some key elements for you to consider when reading the informed consent form. When reviewing the consent form, look to see if the study is experimental, if it's a new drug, if there are extra tests, or extra information that you will have to document. Also, see if the study will have a random chance of receiving the treatment, like flipping a coin, or if everyone will receive that treatment. Check to see if the consent explains the reasonably foreseeable harms, discomforts, inconveniences, and risks that are associated with the research activity. The benefits that you may reasonably expect to encounter should be described also. I want you to know that not all studies may have a benefit from participating other than supporting the overall research. Also, know that compensation for participation is not and should not be considered a benefit. Also, look to see that the alternatives to participating in the research are explained. For example, in drug studies, see if the medications may be available through your family doctor or clinic without the need to volunteer for the research study. It is important to find the statement regarding voluntary participation and the right to withdraw or stop your participation at any time within the consent form. There should be no penalty or loss of benefits as a result of not participating or withdrawing at any time from the research study. Sometimes, if you're taking a study medication, you cannot withdraw immediately for safety reasons. The study team may need to monitor you for some time to ensure that it is safe for you to stop participating in the study. Be sure to review if there are any foreseeable consequences for stopping your participation in the study early. The regulations insist that the consent form and the research staff explain to you the extent to which your personally identifiable private information will be held in confidence. Questions about the research are frequently best answered by the investigators or a research study doctor. However, questions about the rights of research subjects or research-related injuries may be best referred to those not on the research team. You will want to review the consent for identification of contact persons who would be knowledgeable to answer questions about the research, your rights as a research subject, and research-related injuries or questions. These three areas must be explicitly stated and addressed during the consent process and on the form. You should sign and date the consent in the presence of the investigator and or the study team member. The investigator and the study team member should sign and date the consent after you have signed and dated, and you should get a copy of the signed and dated consent. If you need more time to review the consent and or allow a family member or friend to help you decide, you should ask to take the form home. Be assured that taking the time to review the consent does not imply that you are consenting to be in the study. You must sign and date your consent to participate in the study. We're at the final check of your knowledge test. I will read the question and answers, give you a few moments to think on your response, and then give you the correct answer. Information within the consent must be presented in a way that enables people to voluntarily decide whether they will or will not participate as a research subject. Which statement below about consent is accurate? You can sign and date the consent and later decide to withdraw without any penalty. You can sign and date the consent at home and not in the presence of an investigator and or study team member. Getting a copy of your signed and dated consent is not required. The correct answer is you can sign and date the consent and later decide to withdraw without any penalty. Your participation is voluntary. You have the right to withdraw at any time, and there is no penalty or loss of benefit as a result of not participating or withdrawing from the research. Thank you for learning more about the informed consent process. Next, Dr. Harris will close out this presentation.
In closing, medical research continues to develop new and more effective treatments for prevalent and serious illnesses like cancer, kidney disease, and immunological disorders. In the future, clinical trials could produce new preventative strategies like vaccines against diseases, as well as early detection procedures and possible cures for current untreatable illnesses. But we need your help. Participating in research supports these advancements. I am hopeful that you learned more about research, such as the past research on ethical events and how they led to current research regulations, the phases of research and how these phases support safe medications and therapies, and also what to look for when you are reading an informed consent. Thank you. If you have any questions about these topics, please reach out. You can visit the Research Integrity and Compliance website or send an email to the USF QAQI General Inbox at qa-qi at usf.edu. You can also send an email to the general USF IRB inbox at rsch-irb@usf.edu. Thanks again for listening.